Hey everyone, it's me, NCR here with another episode of the Sunshine Podcast. And so if you tuned into my podcast last week, you probably remember that I said I was going to do another part on spiritual warfare. Uh, and it's interesting, throughout this season, I've been able to plan and, schedule and title episodes or whatever a little bit in advance and stuff. This is the first episode that during the interview decided to change the title of it and kind of bring it in a different direction. And also, our conversation today was a little bit short, and I don't know if it was my end or his end. I wouldn't blame it on him. I mean, on his Wi-Fi, but it may have been on my end of the Wi-Fi. I don't know why, but because when you're listening to this conversation, which you'll be able to get to listen to our conversation in a bit, it's my voice that's cutting out of the recording. So I it may have been on my end. I don't know. Also, this episode is the first audio only episode of season 3 of the Sunshine Podcast because so I am if you know me, I'm a tech person. I love tech, and so I completely reinstalled Mac OS, on my MacBook to get a fresh start, and so I've had to reinstall apps like Discord and GitHub and VS Code and the Brave web browser and Simple Note for note taking and Final Cut Pro for video editing and all these. As I had to reinstall them, I had to reinstall Zoom because like I just because I kind of wiped my computer clean and to get a fresh start. I like to do that every once in a while. So this was the first Zoom call since I had reset my MacBook. So yeah. I still don't believe the problem's on my end, but the video recording, it was only recording his video and not my video, and so that's why I was like, you know what? If you can't see my video, I'm just gonna make this an audio only episode. And yeah, this is an audio only episode. So this topic, like I said, we was gonna start on, we were planning to kind of talk about spiritual warfare. And there's a verse in the in the Old Testament. Joseph said something like, what you guys meant for evil, God used for good. That's like an indirect quote of that verse that Joseph said that in the Old Testament. And so Satan wants to disrupt our lives. He wants to. One of the characteristics of Satan. Let me bring up my notes here. I wrote this down earlier. One of the things that Satan, because I found it here. One of the things that Satan wants to do is he wants to prevent us from sharing truth. And so, I do, I have a lot of notes on spiritual warfare, and we do mention it briefly in this episode. And so, I could still title this episode, spiritual warfare, with Collin if I wanted to, but I'm telling it friends and friends with Collin. So we talk about friends, and I want that to be the main takeaway from this episode, kind of to a certain extent. But yes, Satan wants to prevent us from sharing truth, and so as this podcast host, I've been under, I've been under, Satan has really been targeting me and trying to make me feel like a lame person, and other things, and just attacking, the tech related stuff, trying to attack, my computer, put malware on it. Okay, Satan's probably not behind like malware and viruses and all that, but who knows? And where's I going with that? So yeah, this episode is really good. So let's just tune into it, and I'll come back at you again right after the episode to share some more thoughts.
So this is your first time using Zoom?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. This is also your first time being a guest on a podcast as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where we can podcast.
Yeah. I know, even though I've been podcasting for a few years, like every podcast conversation over Zoom is still kind of nerve-wracking for me. I'm kind of nervous going into it. So this is your first time. So were you a little bit nervous today?
Yeah, I was. Getting closer to time, like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it'll go smoothly though.
What?
But I think it'll go smoothly though.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we tried recording this in person. Was it 2 weeks ago? But yeah, the audio quality wasn't good, so we're doing it over Zoom now. And then last week you were kind of sick. And so yeah, the topic of this, this episode is spiritual warfare. And so I guess maybe a question I just want to ask to start with is, do you feel like sickness is a form of spiritual warfare?
I personally don't think so. I mean, I guess it could be in a sense, but I kind of view sickness in a way as like, it kind of humbles you a little bit. It makes you thankful for when you aren't sick.
Yeah.
So I personally don't really think it's spiritual warfare. I think, our bodies, we have immune systems. Our bodies are meant to get sick. God allows us to get sick. So I don't really think, I guess it can be in a form of like, if you get something, major, cancer or something like that, and it kind of messes with maybe your relationship with God or something, maybe it can be. But just sickness as a basis, I don't really think it's spiritual warfare. I think it's actually can be more, like I said, humbling.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting, the things you can learn when you're sick. I actually kind of created have this thing where every time I get sick, I write just my thoughts about what made me sick that particular time, and other things. But there's some Christian teachers, that kind of teach that it is spiritual warfare, and it's interesting, if we look in the Bible, there's a lot of people that, and I haven't done too much research on this, but some of the miracles that you did in the New Testament, when there were people who were suffering from some illness or sickness or something, Jesus usually cast out demons.
Yeah, sure. Even think about that.
So something I kind of struggle with is just the feeling of lameness, and sometimes I feel like my podcast isn't very good. So I just wanted, you listened to a few episodes of it, so just wondering your opinion of my podcast.
I think it's great. I mean, I've gotten some really interesting stuff from it. Yeah, I don't think it's lame at all. I think you have it set up very well, especially for some of our age. Most people don't even know how to do any of this stuff that you do. So it's really cool.
Well, thank you.
I guess I've gotten some very valuable information from it. So
yeah, well, thank you so much for your positive opinion of it. And I was kind of using you to make a point, because it's interesting how God can use people for good, and then also Satan can kind of use people for bad, and and then people can use other people. I just used you to make a point here. So we need good friends to just build us up and keep us protected. And there's a phrase I've heard you say before about friends. Would you mind just sharing that?
Let me think. I know what you're talking about. Oh, bad company corrupts good behavior.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to say. Because so many times I hear people complaining about how they're going down a bad path or something like that, and typically it's the people that are around you. If you're trying to strive to be closer to God, and then you're hanging out with a bunch of people that are doing things that aren't biblical and not spiritually minded, and you're going to go right down the path with them 99% of the time. So that's why it's important. It's not that you can't hang out with people and maybe be a witness to them, but don't partake in their things that they're doing that aren't right. I've helped a few people get away from stuff, talk to them and stuff like that, and praying for them. So you can use it for good, but just don't be partaking in, like I said, what they're doing and stuff that wasn't right.
What has been some of your past history with just friends? What kind of friends have you had?
A lot of my friends, which is why I say bad company corrupts good behavior. A lot of my friends that I had growing up were on decent paths, not really going down bad paths. And then as we got older, they started leaning towards, just doing bad things that aren't good for them and stuff. And I've had to pull myself away and stop hanging out with them, stuff like that, because the things that we're doing, they just, got onto addictions and stuff like that. And which I've had a lot of good influence too as well. But just people that I grew up with when I was in school and stuff like that, just all kind of end up, almost all of them kind of end up going down bad paths, which is sad because it kind of says something about our generation, and majority of people kind of experiment with that stuff and doesn't ever lead to anything good.
So so you've had, you've had, it sounds like bad kind of friends before, and you've quit being friends with them, and now and you have a circle of good friends.
Yeah. Yep. I do.
What are some ways that you are a good friend?
I think I'm typically, when people ask me for help, I'll give them like a biblical form of helping, instead of, oh, hey, you should do this, or something that an average person would tell you that doesn't really follow the Bible or something. And I'll just tell them to pray about the situation and then provide some things that some biblical principles and stuff like that, different that's what I'm thinking of, different situations that may have happened in the Bible, just different stuff that you can learn from it. And I'll try to help people that are struggling, or stuff like that, and provide some verses. I think that's the most important thing, is one of the most important things is like being a light into other people's lives and being that, godly influence, if you will. And that's why I think that's another reason why I think the podcast is awesome, because you may not be getting 2,000 views or whatever, just 100,000 views, whatever, but you're still like being a lot to other people's lives. Like, I've watched several podcasts, and they've all, like I said, have really good, valuable information, and they're all have to do mostly with something to do with God or spirituality, or stuff like that. So, or I don't want to say spirituality, because some of that stuff can go down other paths, but like spiritual, biblical, spiritual.
What are some ways that you are a good friend? I love how my friend had to think about that for a bit. So that's something I want you to think about for a bit, and maybe pause this episode if you have to. Just think about some ways that you are being a good friend, and ways that you can be a good friend before continuing listening to this episode. If you are a new listener to the Sunshining podcast and you've listened this far, I am so excited to have you, and I'm so excited that you tuned in and to the Sunshine Podcast. And I love you to join the Sunshine community. Because as my friend said there, and I'll read that verse from the Bible. He said, Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. That's 1 Corinthians 15:33. And so bad company corrupts good character. And so I don't know who you are. I'm not judging you. I'm not going to say you're a bad person, but and I don't know who your friends are. Maybe you do have good friends. But I do know that you need good friends. And so maybe, and so I don't, if you don't have good friends, um I would love to connect with you on social media. You can follow, me on Instagram, and definitely, so and then you can join the Sunshining community on Facebook, as well as the Discord server, and links to that will be in the description of this. But I do want to talk about social media for a second, actually, because you know, back in back in Bible times, or whatever, it was, what was the verse again? It was, yeah, bad company corrupts good character. And so, bad friends or whatever corrupt your good character. But nowadays it's not just, we have, Instagram feeds or whatever. Like, the people we follow on Instagram, really, like, how many people do you follow on Instagram? And what content are you seeing, like, on Instagram, or what, or Twitter, or Facebook, or TikTok, or YouTube, or what, you know I don't know who you follow. I don't know what content you're seeing, and maybe it's not having, maybe it's not, um, yeah, good content. And so I want, you can't, nobody can survive, on bad food, right? You need good food to survive. And so I encourage you this week, um, to surround yourself with good friends, and and maybe, and I don't know what your social media feeds look like, but maybe, follow some great encouraging people on, social media, just to stay encouraged, like the Sunshining. So that's why I always want to encourage people to follow the Sunshining NCR on Instagram, because I love sharing Bible verses and stuff on my Instagram feed. But and then also, speaking of the Bible is really good, and so I want to encourage you to get in God's word this week. God's word is really amazing. So that's kind of it for this episode. Short and sweet. If you did I already say this? If you know of any young friends, or anybody that would love this podcast, or could really benefit from it, please share my podcast with your friends. Okay, and also subscribe wherever you get podcasts, whether here on YouTube, or on Spotify, or Apple Podcast, or Google Podcasts. And you can also rate my podcast and leave a review on Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. That's a new feature for anyone who didn't know that, because you used to not be able to leave reviews or ratings. I don't know if you can leave reviews. I haven't checked it out. I know you can leave ratings on Spotify now, but I don't know if it's reviews you can leave as well. But whatever. We'll be like, listen to my podcast.